guess like I'd question how are you going to put it on screen?
What?
The sheet. What is that going to look like?
You didn't. Okay. Well, I thought I was
You
just
don't have to. Or is that what you were assuming?
That's kind of what I was assuming because you didn't list that as I assumed that if you'd one of those, you would have included in the graphics.
No, it's fine.
I can definitely have it by next episode.
Okay,
but probably
then,
not this
then
episode.
let's not.
Yeah,
that's not. That's fine.
Man, you can't
That
wait
works
for
too.
the
I
live-
mean, everything's right there to talk about it.
yeah,
So you can
We
just
get
say it, and then you got. Do you have a graphic for? I would, if you can, real quick. I'd make one for each team.
like
Just to, like to pop up when we're talking.
Just a logo.
yeah. Okay, I can do that real quick.
Are we live?
We are live, but I can work while we're live.
I mean, yeah, we've not started the podcast yet, so
Yeah, podcast. Right now we're just
Someone
vibing.
was in the live chat as I was driving. Forgot who it was.
JP, was it some guy named JP?
Yeah.
Jonathan Pusilowski. Let's see. Green Bay Packers. No, are we gonna do this alphabetical order in division?
Do it alphabetical by
City name.
city.
Yeah, so Chicago will be first.
The draft fits are out, man. Jeremiah Fears looks pretty good.
Small said.
See if the spready's posted any more draft fits. Neat Clifford is in, looks like Fortnite Galaxy suit. It's like the Kevin Knox suit, but
It does.
all over.
Fortnite Galaxy suit.
And Clifford, he has a Clifford the big red dog thing sewn into the back of the jacket.
Future Oklahoma City Thunder.
Neat Clifford, that's your prediction?
Asa Newell.
We have heard a rumor going out, which I think is nothing more than a rumor because it'd be insane, that the Hawks have given Newell a promise that they will take him at 13. Which, I'm not saying that'd be the terrible pick, but the idea of promising someone a selection at 13 seems rather bold, considering we don't know how this draft is going to shake out at all. I'm just interested to see if Ace Bailey manages to fall to 8.
For who? Who's at 8?
He wants to go to Brooklyn.
Oh.
Like bad.
They need to just trade up then.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to if they want him. They have 5 first-round picks, too, so.
Yeah, no reason to not trade up.
Almost done, team.
Cooper Flag at 2.
I mean, I'd love that. That'd be a dream scenario.
All right, I'm ready.
Well, that's good.
Proud of you.
Yeah, I move fast. Has anyone checked the live stream to be sure that did you check it? Check the sound,
Yeah, I
all
looked
that.
at
I'll turn it up
Sounds good.
again. It sounded good.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, I heard audio coming out, if that makes.
All right, bet.
Yeah.
It's that just like tickles my brain the right way. Every time I hear that it's working properly, it just makes me very happy. After the unfortunate occurrences we've had.
Sure.
Are
Are you ready to start the podcast?
I mean, yeah, I think so. Let's do it.
I'm always ready.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Technical Foul Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jack Anderson, flanked by JP Pusilowski on my right. What's up, JP?
Nothing much. How are y'all?
Not bad. And then Sanders Oakley on my left. What's up, Sanders?
Not much. Glad to have JP back in the studio.
Yeah, it feels right when all three of us are back in the studio for sure.
Yep.
Anyway, how have y'all been since Sunday, our last show?
I've been doing all right. I'm tired,
Sure.
sleepy, all of the above, but I'm doing good. Slow week at work, so I've been working on this preparation for this show
Nice.
pretty much all of the past 2 days. So I feel good and ready to go.
That's good.
Give some insight here.
I had summer league softball started up this week. Yeah, started this week. Had a game Monday, Tuesday. Went 1-1. Pitched game 1, got the dub. Did not pitch game 2 because I needed to play center field. I had a diving catch.
That's hype.
It was a kind of a ball that went over me. It was pretty close to the fence, and I took a bad step going back, and then ended up having to flip my hips because I was tracking over the wrong shoulder. So I basically turned around, had to find it again, and then just kind of dove backwards, caught it. It was pretty sick. I felt very cool. I felt itchy, but cool.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And then didn't have the best night hitting, but we avoided the run rule. We were playing a pretty good team and avoided a run rule, which was cool because we went down, I believe, 12 in the bottom of the first and ended up losing by like
That's a pretty
8.
tough start.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah. But it was fun. It was fun. I'm excited. We play again tomorrow, and then I think we play 3 times next week, and then yeah, we play a lot of softball because we're making up for last week. Got rained out completely.
Sick. Yeah, I've not been doing much, just work. Kind of like you, JP. It's been slow as always. So played some rematch at work, which is a new 5v5 soccer game. It's pretty fun. The meme is it's Rocket League without the cars.
Yes.
Which it does feel that way.
A
in a lot of
novel
ways.
idea.
But that's also disrespectful to someone who loves soccer. So it is what it is. Yeah, I just want to go ahead and like kind of set the stage for the summer. We've hinted at it a couple times, but now that the NBA Finals are over and the draft is tonight, which is the last NBA thing, we've already talked about it. I gave my mock. We're basically going to be almost a full football podcast for a couple,
Heck yeah.
at least a couple months, if not longer. The rest of the summer is going to be previews for NFL and college, division previews for the NFL, and then we'll preview conferences in college and other things.
Yep.
So a lot to look forward to in that. This is JP and Sanders' wheelhouse, NFL especially.
Yeah.
I can give a little more help when it comes to college. But it should be a fun summer. The boys have put a lot of work into it. I'm really excited. And today it's the NFC North.
Yeah.
Correct.
And with that in mind, as we're kind of looking forward to football season and not a ton of sports are going on, sadly my weekly segments will not be weekly anymore. They will be just kind of sporadic when there's something else to talk about, or if I feel like being selfish and stealing the mic for a couple minutes, they'll pop in here and there throughout the shows to start the shows. But yeah, they won't be every Wednesday. We won't necessarily have the ending of the show the same. It'll be really just football.
They will be back once sports picks back up.
Correct.
This is not.
Yeah,
This is not.
it's not
permanent.
the end. I promise not. I know y'all love them so much. It's probably the reason y'all come and watch our show. So I don't want to rob y'all.
Yeah, as long as
of
you don't
that
look,
for
as
too
long
long.
as we don't look at the video stats, you can keep thinking that. So in that case, do we want to start with your
Yes.
rotten egg
Yeah.
for this
Let's
week?
start with the rotten egg.
All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, my rotten egg is golly.
What did you just do?
Turned up my headset and it didn't like it. I just got feedback in my ears.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you good.
Ace Bailey is my rotten egg. For him and his management, really, for the way they've handled the pre-draft process. It's really weird to see a top player in terms of the number 1 overall player. Isn't that weird? Can y'all hear it too?
Yes.
The squealing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm hearing it as well.
I'm turning it back down. We're gonna see what happens.
Well, it's still gonna be there.
Yeah.
You just won't hear it.
Well, that's better.
Yeah.
If it's better for you, then that's all that matters.
Y'all can hear it too.
Yeah, I can.
Well, I just
hear
don't know why it started when I.
I
turned
hear
mine
it
up.
whenever I talk.
It was before that.
Okay, I'm just blind. And
Like when I talk, it like pops in my ears. And then when I be quiet, it goes away. Let's start the rotten egg over so this is not part of the YouTube clip. Take it away, rotten
I
egg.
hear it all the time.
All right, rotten egg, Ace Bailey / Ace Bailey's management for the way they've handled his pre-draft stuff. Occasionally, you'll see like the best player in the draft class try and like force his way to be like. We kind of saw with Alex Sarr last year. Actually, he didn't want to play for the Hawks. He made that very clear. He wanted to go to DC, so the Hawks took someone else at 1. Maybe they would have taken someone else at 1 regardless, but they go Risa Shea, and then Sarr goes 2. But Ace Bailey is not top 2 in this class by anyone's standards, and he's looking like he's trying to force his way all the way down to 8 at Brooklyn. He's not going to any. He didn't meet with any teams pre-draft. Didn't do any pre-game draft workouts. Not only that, but like he would let teams schedule like plane tickets and hotel reservations and dinners and sessions and everything, and they just like would no show or like call him the day before and be like, "Hey, I'm not coming," which feels pretty disrespectful. So he's just overall I think his management is trying to kind of, I don't know, flex their might a little bit, and he's getting caught in the crossfire. It's going to cost him a little bit of money. And so I feel bad for him. I think he'd be a great player, but it just, I mean, I saw someone say it's like, it seems a little early to be trying to like get your way. You haven't even made it into the NBA yet. So it's just, I don't know.
I don't really know what the standard is or what the precedent is in the NBA, but like my first reaction is I also don't know the details. I didn't hear about it until a couple days ago, and like I haven't been keeping up with what all he's been doing. But if you've got an understanding with a team that you want to go to, and they're like, hey, like we really want you in the building, and you're like, yeah, I'd rather be there than anywhere in the top 7, like I guess kind of dragging your own name through the mud and kind of intentionally being a screw up and letting the guys in that building know, hey, like this is not who I am. I'm just kind of like putting on a show to like piss off the people that I want to piss off so that you have me at 8. Like I don't see the big now. Like sure, he is being disrespectful, by canceling on people. It is a business. It's cutthroat. Like whatever. But my reaction is more like, I mean, if he knows, it's the Nets or the Knicks?
The Nets at 8.
Nets, thank you. As long as he knows that, like, the Nets want him at 8, and maybe he had a meeting with them early on, and he was like, yeah, this is where I want to be, I don't have as big a problem with it, because I'm kind of like, maybe he's just, like, playing the system a little bit.
From what I've heard, though, it's not even like he's met with the Nets either. And also the crazy thing, too, is despite him kind of looking like he's trying to self-sabotage, like you said, I don't even know because he's so talented if he'll even fall to 8 to Brooklyn. So then you're hoping you trust Brooklyn to trade up to get you if they even decide they want to do that. It's just kind of weird. It seems a little directionless. Like they kind of try to execute a hastily put together plan. To get to Brooklyn. So I'm interested to see how it plays out. But yeah, it's just not a good look for someone that for a while looked like he was a lock to go 3rd, and it seems like he doesn't want to go to Philly, so he tries to fall. We'll just have to see how it plays out tonight and during the draft. So.
I actually don't have a problem with what he's doing really whatsoever. I think in the NBA, for me at least, if you pick your destination and you pick it well, you're going to get 4 years there more than likely. And then most of the time, especially these top high first-round picks are being re-signed by these teams. So like Sanders is saying, if Brooklyn wants him and he wants to be in Brooklyn, then that's really all that matters. If he falls to 8 and he gets to Brooklyn, then he's set.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what the perspective of any other NBA team is. The only time it's going to matter is if Brooklyn doesn't work out and he's in a spot where he's in free agency. But that's 4 years down the road. At that point...
people have changed perspectives on him at that point. Unless he continues to screw around in Brooklyn.
Yeah, you'll be 23 at that time. You'd be a lot more mature. So the character issues wouldn't be more of a question, you would think.
Sure.
I'm sure his agents are thinking that as well right now. And you have 4 years of NBA basketball, and a lot of the time, the NBA is really no different than the NFL in that case, where character issues aren't really a factor. Can you play? Can you put the ball in the hole? Can you defend someone? That's really all that matters when you're going off into free agency. I mean, KCP played with an ankle monitor on his ankle, and there's plenty of NBA players that have played through much worse than just hey, I don't want to play with you.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't want to meet with you. I think it's only funny that it reminds me of when I played 2K back in the day, and in the old 2Ks before they had all the big storylines, you would play in the showcase, and then after the showcase, you would go and meet with 3 teams that would or have perspectives of potentially drafting you. And in that, you could literally basically be like, I don't want to play for you. And like your character would get really angry about it and really animated about it for whatever reason. And it reminds me of that. That's
sure.
It's I think it's hilarious because it reminds me of when I did that when like the Charlotte Bobcats are like, yeah, we'd like to take you at 3. And you're like, I don't want to play with the Charlotte Bobcats. I want to play with the Lakers and Kobe right now.
Yeah.
So
sure.
That is funny in that regard, but I don't see an issue with it because if he lands where he wants and the team that wants him, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to get there personally. And once again, why not meet with the Nets? Another thing I also want to just add real quick, because I don't feel like I made it very clear. It's weird, like, hearing people talk about it, because everyone that has met with the kid at the combine or whatever was like, they actually like the kid's personality. I think he's a good kid. They also said they didn't feel like he was very prepared for interviews and the questions that they would ask. But it's not a thing of, like, they think this kid is, like, you know, I said, like, the move to cancel is disrespectful, and it is, but they don't necessarily think he's a disrespectful kid and that he's a bad kid. They like him. So that's why I think everyone's really confused. So.
Sure. I think the big thing, and you touched on it by just using the diction that you used, he's a kid. This is
correct.
He's younger than us.
Oh, it's just
And
crazy.
he is
By a lot.
deciding his financial future and really his future altogether. So it completely makes sense that he's going to listen to his agents and that the agents are going to take advantage of these little kids. I mean,
Correct.
we take advantage of our little siblings, so it's going to be no different for when millions of dollars are on the line. It's
Yeah.
actually probably going to be a lot worse. That's really the story that's happening here.
Agreed.
Is just agents taking advantage of a kid.
I'll never forget
That's why-
when I was like 4 and my brother was 2. We went to the barber to get our haircut. And after you got your haircut, he gave you a piece of like bubble gum, like the classic blue and yellow wrapper. And in the car, I tricked my brother into giving me his pieces, and I already had mine. And then I felt bad, and then I just remember sitting there. For some reason, the radio was playing sad music, and I was just looking out the window, thinking about what I had done, feeling
Hey,
guilty.
you got your bubble gum, so
I
congrats.
got that. I got 2 things bubble gum instead of 1. But I felt awful for it.
Sure.
I was like looking out the window. It may have been raining. It's just like, yeah. Anyway, good memories.
Yeah.
Sorry, Win. I don't know. He probably
He's
doesn't remember
definitely gonna
that. He was
listen.
like 3.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it. It's really honestly more Rod and Egg, Ace Bailey's management
Yeah.
than Ace Bailey. But we can move
Unless
on.
he gets to 8, in which case they could.
True. Then congrats, because the result matters more than the process here.
Yeah.
The process can just help you get the results you want.
For sure.
Shall we get to the meat of the show? What everyone is waiting for, what y'all are waiting for.
Before we get like into the division and into the teams, I think there's a pressing subject. I
boy.
don't know if you've seen change.
I have seen the change. I thought
so
you did it, but I've
I
since
did not
learned you
do
did
it.
not.
So I would like to ask this question at this point, and I think this is a good moment for you to make a stand.
Oh, gosh.
Would you like to decide your NFL team today, or when will you decide your NFL team for the 2025,
I'm not deciding it
2026
today.
season?
I probably won't have a team for the 2025-2026 season.
That I don't know if that's acceptable.
I told him like that makes him look like an NFL shill.
I thought it was hilarious. How did you find a photo with the exact same?
I put the photo you put in to ChatGPT and said, change this photo to a dude wearing NFL colors instead of
That's
Miami
funny.
Dolphins colors.
That's really funny.
The backstory for our listeners is I don't have an NFL team, and Jack and JP want me to pick an NFL team, and I just don't. I can't do that.
Had a team though.
I did have a team when I was little. I was a Colts fan when I was a child, and for Peyton Manning, I called him Peyton Mayonnaise as a kid. He went to the Broncos. I rooted for the Broncos. They won a Super Bowl, so I got to see 2 rings as a Manning fan, and then he retired, and I tried to cheer for the Colts again, and Andrew Luck just kind of like sucked my fandom out. And after Luck retired, I kind of just stopped cheering for teams, and now I just watch all the NFL games that I can. I'll have him as many games on as I can every Thursday night, Saturday, or all day Sunday, and then Monday night. So I just watch a lot of NFL football. JP and Jack have been trying to get me to be a Dolphins fan to the point where JP took my phone while it was sitting open at a wedding watching a baseball game and typed in our group chat and said, "I'm a Dolphins fan," and then set it back down. And I looked at it several hours later and I was like, "What? I didn't say this. I don't remember. I didn't drink that much at the wedding. I would remember that." And so it was just like, okay, all right. So that I changed. JP created some very cool AI generated art of the 3 of us.
Cool.
Yeah, him as a Saints fan, Jack as a Commanders fan, and myself in Dolphins gear. And then I changed it to myself in just generic NFL gear, which apparently looks like, what's his name?
Rob Lowe.
Rob Lowe. Thank you.
You know the picture I'm talking about of him in the
yes,
NFL
yes,
cap.
yes,
That's
yes. I do.
Which is it's just a bad look, man.
Yeah. Well, I'll change it to more generic, even more generic colors then,
How did Andrew Luck like kill your fandom?
because he was hurt all the time and we were bad.
But he also like when he wasn't hurt
Yeah, but he was hurt all the time.
was a dog.
He was also like, it's just crazy. I forget how good he was because I feel like he was hurt. I also forget he played as long as he did. He
Yeah.
played like 7 or 8 years. To me, it felt like he played like 3 and then was done.
Well, yeah,
Which
because you stopped caring at that point.
I
You-
had
you
stopped
left
caring.
the boat.
I did. I got off the Colts. And now I can't rejoin because actually they're not good again.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, I could rejoin. I don't. My heart is not there.
Your heart
Y'all
is
are
with
like
the
trying
NFL.
y'all are trying to force me into arranged marriage. I want to marry for love, and you guys are like, no, you have to pick.
We're
someone
letting
now.
you pick your
I
love.
think you're gonna have the opportunity for that because we're gonna deep dive into all 32 NFL teams very very well
Mm-hmm.
and talk about the off season, what to expect this season, the big questions going to the season. So I think personally, I think you should be able to make a decision by the end of this.
Yeah.
What I'm doing right now is asking if you will commit to that.
If I find a team that I'm like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna be a fan of this team. I'm gonna stay committed. I just don't know that that's gonna happen.
Who's your favorite player in the NFL right now?
That's not Dak Prescott.
It's honestly probably not even Dak. I can't think of it off the top of my head. I'd have to like look. It's probably it's probably another state guy, like a Jeffrey Simmons. It could be him. But
Is he still with the Titans?
yeah, he is.
And your brother's a Titans fan.
Yeah.
So
I'm not about to be a Titans fan.
they got Cam Ward.
Yeah, I will not be a Titans fan. How do we want to do this? Just four teams, 15,
14.
20 minutes each.
Yeah.
And
Roughly.
then
As long as you want,
yeah.
you'll clip it up into 4 videos and post 4 videos.
How are we gonna do, like, are we gonna pick an order? Like, do we want to do like 4 videos, 1 team each, and then like a 5th video that's like each of us like picking the finishing order, things like that?
We can do that. I think that'll work better in potentially a TikTok form
Okay.
where we could have 4 TikToks where we just rapid fire through the games, and I guess you could have a YouTube video where you talk about the full standings, but I think in the TikTok you can just rapid fire through the teams and then show the standings at the end.
Okay. Well,
But that can be something we figure out after
cool.
we were talk about the 4 teams.
Let's just get started.
Yes, does who wants to open these teams and these videos, I guess.
I mean,
Hold on, let me check something. Let me change
I
this
am
image
more
to
than
be
able
the
to.
new thing.
you're welcome to start. I can also start. I'm gonna
I-
be the shortest talker of the bunch. So
And I
Where
would
did I put it? Hold
I
on.
will
hold on,
gladly
hold on.
start.
okay, bet.
I'm not quite ready. Sorry. Now, yep, go for it.
All right. The Chicago Bears come into the season with some big questions pressing them. 5-12 last season, kind of a disappointment. You had the Hail Mary against Washington that really turned the season around.
My boys.
Caleb was really poor in one-score games. He had 1 touchdown more than interceptions in one-score games. In games that were out of reach, whether they were blowing someone out or getting blown out, which they were getting blown out more often than the other, he threw 1 interception. It was basically an 8-to-1 ratio, if I remember correctly. So Caleb was outstanding when the game did not matter. And this is going to be a big question for Chicago going forward in this season. Is Caleb Williams going to break the curse? Chicago is the only franchise in NFL history to never have a 4,000-yard passer. In NFL history, 50 different quarterbacks have done it for a combined 130 seasons. Absolutely insane to think about. And with Caleb being the Heisman quarterback and the number 1 overall pick, you have questions of will he be the guy to finally break the curse? Because really, Chicago really has never had a quarterback of this kind of stature for a long time. Jay Cutler was never this. Mitch Trubisky was never this. And now Caleb is here. So the big hirings of the offseason, Ben Johnson comes in to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears from Detroit. Sanders, if you don't mind putting up last season, the offensive ranks for Chicago. We'll go through these real quick. So last season, Chicago was abysmal under Matt Eberflus offensively. 28th in points per game, 32nd yards per game, 32nd yards per play, and 31st on third down. So the addition of Ben Johnson, you would think, is going to be a huge factor for them going forward in the season. Here's the Lions under Ben Johnson as the offensive coordinator the last 3 seasons where they've ranked in points and yards per game. Pretty remarkable, I'd say, myself. And you think about the weapons that Chicago is now surrounded around Caleb Williams and all of the players that Ben Johnson was able to use effectively in Detroit. You would think we're in a spot where Chicago is going to have a brilliant season. You would hope. The offense, you would think, is going to be pretty remarkable. I have a big question for them going forward is what does this offense look like in December? Because in December, they are going to be playing outdoors, unlike they were in Detroit. Detroit is a dome. Chicago will not be that at Soldier Field, so that's going to be an interesting question at the end of the season.
Sure.
I think if there was any pushback on Chicago offensively, it's going to be how do they look in December because they lack the offensive weapons at tailback. DeAndre Swift is really the only running back of, any stature for Chicago. Their secondary running back, Roshan Johnson, was more of a goal line running back. He had 6 touchdowns last season, basically all from the 1-yard line. He stole a ton of fantasy points from DeAndre Swift, which I had DeAndre Swift. I was not happy about that. And then another player I think can contribute for them at tailback, but it'll be interesting, Kyle Monangai from Rutgers. He was pretty clutch for me in fantasy football for college and as well for Sanders.
Got me a national championship.
Exactly.
Or a
So
championship.
he is someone who could come in and be the tailback for Chicago. But I think that's going to be an interesting question is when we come around to December, is Chicago going to be a team that can run the football? Because that's something they're going to have to do. It's going to be really hard to throw the ball and fly around with all of this speed when you get into December.
Sure.
And then with the offensive line additions, are they going to be able to play well in December? And more importantly, are they going to be healthy going forward? So what do you guys see from Chicago here this season? Just a general look, and then we can kind of go into picking games.
I think they got a very unfortunate draw in their division. Right now, the NFC North has the closest margin between first and fourth, according to Vegas, as far as winning the division goes. It starts, the Lions have the best chance at plus 135, and the Bears have the worst chance at plus 450. That's a margin of like 315. In other conferences, you see margins of like 3,000.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really close race, realistically. And then keeping or getting Ben Johnson from your in-division rival is going to be huge. The way he was able to kind of revive Jared Goff's career in Detroit after he kind of got run out of the building in L.A. Now, you could argue, was Goff kind of a not necessarily game manager, but the talent around him, how much of that was Jared Goff and Ben Johnson, and how much of that was Ben Johnson and the weapons. Either way, Ben Johnson was very involved in that. So that'll be really interested to see. I kind of like, you talked about Caleb Williams and how he might have been more of a garbage time quarterback, and that's where the majority of his stats come from. Another thing I'm going to point out is he was sacked 68 times, which is the most we've seen in an NFL season since Joe Burrow's historic 70-sack season in 2021. So that was a historically bad offensive line. They brought in some new 3 new pieces on the interior, and so it's hopeful that those upgrades will kind of give Caleb Williams the support he needs to take the success he had against lesser teams and in garbage time and put that into the closer games and when it does matter.
Yeah, Joe Tooney comes from Kansas City likely to play left guard for them, and then they acquire via trade Jonah Jackson from the Lions, who was a starter for a couple games last year for Detroit. Jonah Jackson doesn't have a good PFF grade, but the Bears are pretty high on him, and their offensive line is kind of figured itself out a little bit. Darnell Wright will return at right tackle, and then Braxton Jones from New York, the Giants, is going to come and play left tackle for them. A big thing that I loved about their offseason was, Ben Johnson comes into Chicago, and you come from a division rival. There's going to be question marks there. He immediately embraces the city of Chicago, and then he goes out and shows Chicago, we're not going to mess around here. And he does that with the NFL draft. His first round pick, Colston Loveland, a tight end, not necessarily a need with Cole Kmet there. He goes ahead and grabs him. And then in the second round, Luther Burden falls to Chicago. And this is a guy who, in mocks to begin the season, was looking to be a potential pick in the teens.
Yeah. Wide
And-
receiver 1 on some boards.
Exactly. And here he is in Chicago now, and he can be wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 for Chicago, behind DJ Moore and hopefully a year 2 ascension from Roma Dunze. I think a big, thing that I researched and I looked into, and I hope this is going to be the case with Caleb, because I do like Caleb, is the Heisman Trophy quarterback effect. And this is a graphic made by me. This is not coming from ESPN or anyone else. Look down the list. Only one quarterback that was a Heisman Trophy winner since 2014 has had a worse second year than they have first year. And there are some people on this list like Bryce Young, 2-14 to 4-8. Yeah, it's not like a huge improvement, but it's improvement. And that is something to be said for these Heisman quarterbacks, is don't give up on them so early, because that second year has shown to be something that is good. And for a lot of these guys on this list, it has gone from, Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, and Joe Burrow, terrible rookie seasons for the most part. Joe Burrow ends up tearing his ACL. And the second season, they make the playoffs. So this is something that we would look to see for Caleb Williams next season potentially. And Jaden Daniels is on that list at 12-5. It would be kind of crazy if he were to even improve on that record. But historically, it says that in this era of the NFL, this is something that can be the case. I stopped at 2014 because if you go prior to that, you have guys like RG3, Sam Bradford, Cam Newton. None of them improved in their second season.
But they also had very successful rookie seasons.
They had successful rookie seasons, but I'd also argue that it was a kind of a different era of the NFL and a different era of the quarterback as well.
Yeah, sure.
So that's something to look forward to potentially for Bears fans, is Heisman quarterbacks tend to be better in their second year. And that's not really a big take. Like, quarterbacks in general tend to be better in their second year. But that's a trend to look towards and to look hopeful for the Chicago Bears. One thing you got to remember, this is a team that lost Keenan Allen. They lose Tevin Jenkins from the offensive line. And they also lost Gerald Everett, so there's some pieces missing offensively. But Ben Johnson, as I said, addressed that immediately. Defensively, their additions with Grady Jarrett, it's going to make this defense very interesting. Grady Jarrett basically walks from Atlanta, and coming from Atlanta, I play in a poker night, my dad's poker night, and all of those guys are Atlanta Falcons fans. Mm-hmm. And the first Monday after that happened, they were pissed, to say the least. Like, they let Grady Jarrett walk for nothing, and now Grady Jarrett is here in Chicago, and he kind of beefs up this defensive line with Bulldog legend Montez Sweat, who just signed the extension. A big question for them, I think, would be in the cornerback room with Tyreek Stevenson and how that all panned out post-Hail Mary. That was a really interesting story. I wonder how Ben Johnson is going to address that and really address the defense there. You expect Jalen Johnson to come back and, be healthy for one, and then for two, to produce at the level that we have seen him produce. Jaquan Brisker is going to return as well. And so this defense has some names on there, and I think that's key for any successful Chicago Bears team in history. It's really been, has the defense been really good? I mean, you think about the teams in the 80s, sorry. Those teams were outstanding defensively, and even in our early childhood, the Jay Cutler teams were led by Brian Urlacher, and they were defensive first more than they were offensive. I mean, Matt Forte was the running back for a long time there. That's not like an elite threat at running back. So that's going to be interesting for Chicago. Is the defense there? Because if the defense is there, I think they're going to be successful. How is the fan base going to, enjoy potentially or react to this offense? And I think a big thing for them is, if you see the offense successful in those first 6 weeks, pause, put the brakes on, because you got to remember the weather is going to get colder, and I'm very curious if that's going to be something that continues. Now, for them, it helps a little bit because I think their schedule down the stretch helps them a ton. They're going to play Cleveland. They're going to host Green Bay. They get to go to San Francisco on the second to last week of the season. That's not going to be a very cold weather game. And then hosting Detroit, a dome team, the last week of the season, when it's supposed to be the coldest in the early January, I think is going to play into their favor a ton. That's why I see them going 4-0 down the stretch, playing Cleveland, Green Bay, San Francisco, and Detroit. For me, I have Chicago going 11-6, second in the division, just behind the Green Bay Packers, and we'll get into the Packers and the other teams later. Where do you guys have Chicago finishing up?
Yeah, sure. So I have them going 8-9. So not as optimistic of an outlook. I think there's going to be some growing pains in year one. There's just a lot of new pieces. I do like the hire of Ben Johnson. I mean, I think he did great work in Detroit as the OC, but his first time head coach. So maybe some growing pains there. Just a lot of new pieces to gel, and it's a tough division. Like we talked about, it's probably the toughest division. So market improvement from year one under Caleb Williams, but not necessarily the 12-5 you have them at.
Yeah, I'm also
I got
lower.
'em 11-6, not
11-6. Sorry.
You good?
I am also lower. I've got them going 9-8, and there's always a possibility. And this is one of those things where I wouldn't be surprised to see them go 11-6, 12-5, and we see a Houston Texans 4th to 1st in 1 year kind of situation. That would not surprise me at all. I don't expect that though, so I'm going to go with 9-8. I do think that they will get some big wins against in division opponents, but I just don't expect them to have the week in and week out success that would lead to them winning the division.
Yeah, I have them 11-6. Big Cat, the famous Barstool, one of the owners, I guess, or management or whatever you want to call him.
Higher ups.
Higher ups, yes. He is
An
just as
admin.
high as I am at 11-6. This division is really the only division where all four teams you could see winning the division, and I also think all four teams you could see winning games in the teens. 13,
Yeah.
14 games is completely possible for all four of these teams, and that's why we, for one, started with this division, because it's going to be the most intriguing division in football. All of these interleague games are going to be close, super impactful to the race. I mean, you think about last season, the Vikings and Lions come down to a field goal to end the season for the number one seed
Yeah.
in the NFC.
On Sunday Night Football, right?
On Sunday Night
Electric.
Football, the last game of the season. Like, that's something that could definitely happen again this season, where we get to a point of last game of the season. It could be Detroit going into Chicago on Sunday night, or it could be Minnesota and Green Bay. Winner makes the playoffs, or winner wins the division, loser goes home. Like, that is something that is, I really think is very possible to happen. So for me, I felt like you got to go be bold on at least two of these teams, and then bullish on the other two.
Yeah, that's fair.
Is that the right word? Bullish?
Bullish is
Yes.
a word.
You're
yes.
using,
in that
you're using
context,
it correctly.
yes.
Okay, good.
The good stuff.
I couldn't actually tell you the meaning, but it sounds right. So
Being
You're
down.
using it in the right Yeah.
Okay,
correct.
yes. Bullish on two teams, and then, high on the other two. And so for me, I felt like Chicago shows that, because I think they've got one of the best head coaches, even though he's never been a head coach before. I think he's going to be. And I think they have the second best quarterback in the division right now, behind Jordan Love. So I think they're...
You use it incorrectly, actually. It's
think
confident
bullish.
or optimistic.
I was about to
Okay.
say, I thought
I had to
bullish
flip
was
that.
a synonym.
So bullish or down on two teams, each of those. Yeah, I think Ben Johnson is already the second best head coach in the division, and I think the second best quarterback is Caleb Williams, and that's bold. I'm saying that boldly, but I look at the other guys. Dan Campbell, I think we're going to have a big question with the offensive coordinators, which we'll get into. Kevin O'Connell has a question of, can he even succeed in the playoffs, which we'll also get into. And I think Matt LaFleur is by far and away the best coach in the division. I think he's shown that
Sure.
with Aaron Rodgers and with Jordan Love. So for me, I got Chicago.
And even the former Louisville quarterback who was drafted by the Titans, that LaFleur's, and we can talk about this.
Teddy Bridgewater?
No. The one that LaFleur won 2 games with last season.
Malik Willis.
Thank
he's
you.
from Liberty.
Liberty, thank you.
But yes.
I mean, it's just very impressive coaching by LaFleur. So, tough conference. And I do agree Caleb Williams being the second best quarterback, but I disagree. We can go ahead and move into my
Sure.
best quarterback. You want to go and do that?
Hey, if you want to
The-
give your best, sure.
Well, I was going to say the team, Detroit Lions.
Okay, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Wait,
Yeah.
hold on. Well, last thing about the Bears, I also just want us to remember this is the Bears, a very weary franchise and fan base. Some would call them cursed in recent years, ever since the doink. Who
Yes.
was the kicker for that?
Cody Parkey.
Yes.
Yes, Cody Parkey. So it's like I agree that someone's gonna have to come out of this crowd. I may fall in recent history.
They have
as
the
my reason
second
to
most
not.
Super Bowls in the division.
That's
so
what I
that
said.
would be my pushback.
He did say
recent
recently.
history. Ever since the doink, they
Well,
have
all
been-
of history would say the Lions and the Vikings are terrible. So
agreed.
But recent history does not.
sure.
We can go ahead and move on to the next team that has my number one quarterback in the division, the Lions. Well, I say that. Can you talk about them while I change the graphic?
Yeah, absolutely. Detroit comes off a amazing season, and then just an absolute embarrassing playoff loss to Jack's Commanders.
Let's
and
go.
Jaden Daniels.
I was stunned that happened. Not gonna lie.
I think the first thing I'm going to go ahead and bring up and say, and go ahead and put it on the board, the 2024 injuries was the story of the season for them. This is mainly defensive players. Aiden Hutchinson misses 13 games with a broken leg. Aleem McNeil, their second best defender, missed 4 games at the end of the season, missed the playoff games. Derek Barnes was going to be a key piece for them. He's not really a household name because he did not play at really at any point last season except at the beginning. He gets hurt in week 3, but he was going to be a cornerstone for their defense. Alex Anzalone, I'll never forgive you. Don't let me get into it. I'll get into it at another day. But he misses 6 games last season. Marcus Davenport, a former Saint as well, missed 15 games. They had some issues on the offensive line. Taylor Decker missed games. John Kaminsky missed games. David Montgomery had that big knee scare and then comes back for the final week and scores another touchdown. Carlton Davis also missed games. So the story of the season for Detroit was the injuries. I mean, they were just absolutely torn apart there. And they were the second best offense in the NFL last season, and that's the only reason that they finished 15-2. They were just prolific offensively, and I think a huge part of that is Ben Johnson. So let's put the Ben Johnson graphic up there again. This is the stuff that Ben Johnson was able to do with this Detroit offense, and a big part of that was being aggressive with draft picks, picking Jamison Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs, and then being aggressive with David Montgomery. You have Sam Laporta from the draft as well. But they lose that. They lose Ben Johnson. They lose that brilliant play caller. They lose the trick plays. And a big question for them is going to be how do they replace that? And on the other side, I have another big question is Aaron Glenn. And Aaron Glenn was terrific for them last season. While the numbers weren't there defensively, I think a huge part of that was, like I said, injuries.
Sure.
But they were forcing turnovers throughout that entire season. Regardless of who was on the field, they forced 24 turnovers. That was top 10 in the league. And then another thing they were really, really good at was they were shutting teams down in the red zone. They were top 12 in the league. 54% of the time they would allow a touchdown in the red zone. And Aaron Glenn was terrific for that. He goes to the New York Jets, and now you're going to have questions again defensively. Who is going to be calling the plays? Who is going to lead that unit? Because Dan Campbell is going to be the guy who's the head coach. He's never really going to be the guy who's calling plays for this Lions team. And so you got 2 big questions there. And I'll just start with y'all's thoughts on Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn going before I get into more of the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I mean, undeniably huge losses. I think a lot of people viewed him as the best coordinator pair in the NFL last year. I obviously know Dan Campbell's not calling the plays. They have to replace the coordinators. I have faith in Dan Campbell kind of being able to rally the troops and kind of keep everyone, I guess, on the boat, headed in the right direction, getting the coordinators on board. But it is definitely, I mean, it's a big worry, right? Offensively, though, they do have a lot of those same pieces that were part of the great offense. Ben Johnson was the mastermind, but it's not like they're not talented there. So you would expect, or I would expect them to still have a pretty good offense, if maybe not quite that level of explosiveness that they had. But yeah, it's a huge question mark. But I'm not like panicking in any fashion.
Yeah, I'm with Jack. I trust the head coach
He's also an Aggie, so I got to be biased.
Campbell
but
is an Aggie.
he is
a
an Aggie.
Fire Aggie legend.
Legendary Aggie.
Yeah,
Sitting on the side of the stadium.
he may be. I don't know for sure.
Okay.
We got to get somebody on that.
I'm getting on
He
it.
should already be on it.
Yeah, I trust Dan Campbell because he identified both these coordinators and kind of gave them this big opportunity. So I kind of trust him to identify that coordinating talent. He just seems to be very good at the football talent and the coordinator talent and the just managing a staff and a roster very well. What I'm more concerned about is he's had months. They kind of saw the coordinator situation coming. There were rumors that Johnson was going to leave last year for the Texans job. He decided to stay and run it back for one more year. And so this has been 12 to 18 months in the making of preparation, of like knowing that you're going to have to replace these guys. I think the bigger issue is going to be at center because they're having to replace their center, Frank Ragnow, out of the blue. Everyone was kind of assuming they were going to have him for another year to be the center of an offensive line that was returning all the starters. And then he just kind of retired 2-3 weeks ago, very unexpected. And now that means rookie Tate Ratledge is going to have to start at center. And this is a guy that you drafted, I believe, in the second round. And you drafted him to sit for a year, played guard at Georgia. And then also he I believe he played guard because I think that he was on that same career trajectory as Ragnow, where they wanted him to sit for a year, make that transition to center. He started 3 years at Georgia, but he's a little bit older. He played 5 years there, started the last 3, and was always a better pass blocker than a run blocker, which history dictates that that's not what you want. Typically, the better run blockers are going to have more successful careers, and that's not, that's a general rule, but that's got me a lot more nervous because this was not the plan. Losing the coordinators was kind of always the plan because when you're that successful, that's going to happen. So I'll be really interested to see. Thankfully, they return a bunch of weapons. They still got Jared Goff at quarterback and even hand at the steering wheel. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes and how that affects the offensive line. But you still have the best 1-2 punch at running back in the country. You still have one of the best wide receiving cores in the country. So it'll be really interesting to see how that offense looks with a different center.
I think the team. Or
I was
you
going
have
to
something
quickly,
Go ahead.
Dan Campbell. I don't know if he's on side of the stadium. We did give him a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Okay.
This past year. So
Gig 'em. I would say for the questions about Ragnow and now with Tate Ratledge, I think we could potentially. I think for the Lions fans, this is what you would hope for. Look at the Eagles team losing Jason Kelce, replacing it with Cam Jurgens. And then look what was around Cam Jurgens. The offensive line stayed the same around them with future Hall of Famers. And then the offense still had tons of weapons. And you add Saquon Barkley. And Cam Jurgens stepped into that role and he was great for them. And I wonder if that is something that Tate Ratledge can do as well. That would be an interesting question. The hope would be for Lions fans that you could go down that same path, obviously with winning the Super Bowl as well. I think this is really a make-or-break year for the Lions. The Lions are currently 3rd in the league in cap space for this season, but they're 28th in cap space for next season. This is going to be a result of their extension. So next year, Jared Goff, St. Brown, Penei Sewell, and Aleem McNeil have extensions that kick in and shoot up their money for next season. And those 4 players hit the cap for $66.7 million this year. Next year, they're going to hit for $100 million more at $160 million. So this is a make-or-break year for Detroit. They lose all of their flexibility next year, and they're really locked into the players that they have. And this brings up my next question about them is, and I'll ask you guys as well, did they already miss their championship window? Did it pass by just like that? Because next year, there's no flexibility, and Jared Goff is not getting any younger. And there's already questions about this season with the loss of the 2 coordinators. NFC seems like it's going to get even better. I mean, we think about the Commanders and their resurgence last season. Chicago is poised to be good. You would assume the Packers are going to continue to be good. Is J.J. McCarthy the next superstar? Who knows? And then with the Eagles still being there. So my question to y'all is, did they miss their championship window already with their mistakes, with the 21-point lead in the NFC Championship against the 49ers 2 years ago, and then just getting absolutely boat raced by Jaden Daniels last year. Is it overall ready for this Detroit?
Yeah, a couple things. I don't necessarily think so. I think this is kind of their last ride, though. I can get behind kind of that sentiment, because even if the season doesn't go to plan, I feel like championship window is a lot dictated, I guess, by like preseason expectations and plans of where the team can go. I definitely think it's closing. Okay, talking about Jared Goff. Jacob Glenn was in my head. Shout out Jacob Glenn. But Jared Goff. Am I crazy to say like he's someone I don't trust at all to win the big game?
Not
Like,
at all.
okay, I was like, you can club me over the head if you want as an NFL casual, but just like looking back at his game against the Commanders in the NFC championship semifinals last year, and just stuff like that, he's someone that I don't know if I would ever trust or expect him to lead me to win a Super Bowl. And so in that sense, it's like I don't know if I ever really have loved their window because of that aspect there. But they are undeniably a great team.
Sanders, you're a big Jared Goff guy. What do you think?
I think my answer to, well, I'll answer the first part. My answer to is the championship window closed after this season will depend on how this season goes. If it's a struggle and it looks like Dan Campbell is barely holding things together after losing those two coordinators, then 100% I'm putting my stamp on it and saying the championship window is closed. If they kind of cruise through it and cruise to 12, 11, 13 wins and look good and look confident and then lose a couple pieces, but it looks like Dan Campbell has done a good job at keeping the continuity going, then I will say that the window is still open. So it'll really depend on how they handle this kind of this big test of this upcoming season, is how do you replace two very good coordinators. So that's the answer to part one. I disagree. I think I would trust Jared Goff, and maybe that is just recency bias because over the past 2 years he's been in such a successful offense, and so
Sure.
he has looked good as a result. Maybe if you put him in a bad offense, if you put him in that Bears offense last year and he looked bad, my answer would be different. But I do think that Jared Goff has matured. And he looked good. I mean, he went to a Super Bowl with the Rams, had one or two bad seasons there, got shipped out to Detroit in a trade, a very rare trade where both teams won and they won big. So I do have a good bit of trust in Jared Goff just because he has been very consistent, and so I trust, even if he may not be the superstar that is going to win games in a way that Patrick Mahomes would, I trust his consistency to win those big games because I don't expect him. Like, I expect him, if you need him to go down and make a drive, I think that he is consistent enough that he can just methodically do that. Now, he's not going to make a sidearm horizontal pass like Patrick Mahomes will. He's not going to do a no-look pass like Matthew Stafford will. He's not going to hit a 75-yard Hail Mary like Aaron Rodgers. But I do trust him because of his consistency, to be consistent under the biggest pressure, that any football player is going to see in the NFL and like in big games. So I do disagree with y'all. I've got him as my best quarterback in the NFC North. So I do have a good bit of trust, or a good deal of trust to Jared Goff.
Yeah, I mean, I would still have him as the best quarterback going into the season. But just because it's like, I don't necessarily know if I trust any of these guys to win the big game. I mean, you have someone that hasn't played, and then Caleb Williams, and then I do like Jordan Love a good bit, but he's had his inconsistencies. I just like Goff always has the knack for the very inconvenient pick. So.
Definitely something to look forward to in terms of their team this season. This is one of the teams I was not bullish on.
Low
Detroit
on.
Lions. I was actually very low on them. I have them going almost the complete opposite of Sanders and Jack's way. I have them going 6-11. I think the opening stretch of the season is absolutely brutal. This is your first 7 games before the bye week. At Green Bay, hosting Chicago in a Ben Johnson revenge game, going to Baltimore, hosting Cleveland. That would hopefully be a win, and that's where I have their one win in the first 7 weeks. Going to Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, going back to Kansas City, which would be a revenge game for the Chiefs, and then hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which you've already lost in the regular season 2 years ago. So very, very brutal opening stretch. I have them going 1-6 in that opening stretch before the bye week, and that is a large part in the reason that I have them going 6-11. Now I want to flip it, and Sanders has them actually going 6-1 in those opening 7 weeks. Why do you feel that they are going to get off to a hot start, unlike me?
I think because even if you bring in a new coordinator, I think if you this team has so much chemistry. The way they have meshed over the past 2 years under Jared Goff as quarterback, I don't think that you can take that away. Scheme might be a little bit different. Once again, I trust Dan Campbell to not do a Zach Arnett thing and say, oh, here's what we're doing, and then lie and do something else different. I trust Dan Campbell to be like, all right, guys, here's what we're doing, and then just do that. And I trust him to bring in a coordinator that's going to work well with the team. And I also, I have a lot of trust in this Lions team. We shall see. But yeah, I'm not the highest out of all of us. I've got them going 12-5. Jack's got him going 13-4, and then my brother, our Lions fan, has him going 14-3, finishing the season on a 7-game win streak, I believe, and losing only one after week 5. So I think you were very much in the minority. Now that's an extreme. 14-3 would be a wild record with that. That's a pretty tough schedule. But I do think you're very much in the minority there with your very low expectations for the Lions.
I think it's so much schedule based for me. My lowness on them, because like I said earlier, I think this division, all 4 teams could win it. All 4 teams could win games in the teens. And then on top of that, I think it's hard to say, besides maybe the Vikings, that one of these teams is just going to be outright bad. But I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. I guarantee one of these teams is going to be outright bad. I guarantee you. And it could be injury based. But I guarantee you one of these teams is only going to win 6 games. And for me, it's the Lions. And I think it's largely, I should say, schedule-based with those opening 7 weeks. And then post-bye, they host Minnesota, go to Washington, and go to Philly. Like, it does not get easy until Week 12. Week 12, besides Week 4 with Cleveland, is really the only game that I look at and is like, okay, that's a layup. They should win that game, and that's the Giants. So in the first 12 weeks, you have 2 layups. Like that, I just think they're going to struggle. I really like the culture there. I do. But I think the loss of the coordinators is going to be too much, and I have tons of questions about that, about their ability to win these close games, because they're going to be playing good teams, and these games are going to be close. And unless the offense is as prolific as it was last year, which I don't expect because of my Ben Johnson graphic, as we've seen, I'm just low on the Detroit Lions this season, and I got them finishing 6-11.
Kind of crazy. I don't think you have them winning a road game.
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah. They pick up 6 wins at home and go put a big fat 0 on the road. I have them going 13-4, like it was mentioned. Probably a little high, but I just still really like this group of players that they have. I think they've just got dudes up and down the roster, both offensively and defensively. And once again, I'm a big Dan Campbell guy. So I'm going to I think I'm going to ride with them until they fall apart, if that makes sense. And so that's why I have them going 13-4.
Well, that's I think that's good for the short
I do.
Lions.
I would be interested at some point. I don't want to do it now because I feel like it kind of spoils the rest of the show. I do kind of like the idea of. I do kind of agree that one team is just going to be bad, and I know who I think, and it's not the Lions. But I don't want to say it right now because I don't want to spoil the rest of the show. At the end, I'd like to come back and address it. Would you agree, Jack? Because I kind of like that take, and I think
you're guaranteed a team wins 12 or more, and you're guaranteed a team doesn't win more than 6.
Because and that's supported by last season. Because last season the NFC North set the record for the highest division win percentage ever at 662. Yeah, .662, and they still had the Bears go 5-12. So even if you are the best division we've ever seen in football, you're still going to have a team do poorly. So that's
Someone's got to be the punching bag if everyone else is going to win the game.
yes, they
So,
definitely do.
I can see it being mixed around a little more than it was last year in terms of wins and losses. But I think I get behind. It's likely someone doesn't get more than 6 wins.
And I'm saying that not on a injury thing. Like, I don't think it's an injury-based thing for me. I would just say out of these teams, I am the lowest on them because of the schedule. I don't think that with their losses, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, that they are better than most of these teams that they're going to play.
Yeah.
And I just have a ton of concern there. And they
Sure.
very well could prove me wrong. And Dan Campbell would love to hear more of that from the media, which
Absolutely.
we are a part of course.
Yeah. Big media
Established
guys over here.
members.
Yes. So I think it's going to be really interesting there. And I want to touch on the health because I touched on this and I forgot to say it. I don't think health is going to be as much of a factor because of their additions defensively through free agency. They added DJ Reed, who's going to be, I think, going to be really good, coming from the New York Jets. Avonte Maddox, who was kind of poor for the Eagles, but he's a good depth piece. And I think one that people are sleeping on is an older guy, but Zach Cunningham from the Broncos, I think, is going to be key for them at the backer. All 3 of those additions defensively in free agency are going to help them because that's what happened. The depth was not there because the depth became the starters when all of the starters got hurt last season. And, yeah, like I said, injuries is not the factor here in me being low on them.
Sure.
I think it's just schedule-based, and I just don't think they're better than all the teams that they're going to play. They're lucky they don't have to play the New Orleans Saints this season as well.
Whatever.
But, yeah, I think that's good for the Detroit Lions. That'll get us into our next team.
Go Pack, go.
Yeah. Green Bay Packers had a
Correct.
very successful season last year. They finished
Pack, go.
3rd in the NFC North. They finished top 10 in offensive points, offensive yards, defensive points, and defensive yards. I think this season is going to be defined by their passing game. Jordan Love comes back for his 3rd season as a starter, and in his 2nd year, he regressed, throwing for less yards, less touchdowns, and more interceptions than he did in his 1st year as a starter. He did improve in the second half of that season, throwing 23 touchdowns to only 3 interceptions from Week 11 onto their elimination in the wild card round because every NFC North team lost in their first game of the playoffs. But the biggest thing about the Green Bay Packers is I hate their wide receiver room. They are. It was all right last year. It was kind of I feel like they're trying to play Moneyball, where they have a lot of guys and no superstar. And then this year, they spent their 1st round pick on, in my opinion, a guy who is not a superstar and is going to just do the exact same thing that their other 5 guys they already had in the room are going to do. And that really bothers me. And then they spent a 3rd round pick on another wide receiver that I don't think is going to be a superstar. So they just continue to invest a lot of resources into guys I don't expect to return on that investment. They've got Dontavian Wicks, who played 19 games last year with 605 yards on 14.8 yards per reception. They've got Jaden Reed, who played 18 games, 8 touchdowns, 12.2 yards per reception. Romeo Doubs, 19 games. They had nobody go over 1,000 yards last year. They've got Christian Watson, who did experience some pretty severe hamstring issues all of last season. Played 11 games, had just over 400 yards, 5 touchdowns. And then they spent a 1st round pick and a 3rd round pick on Matthew Golden and Savion Williams. I am worried about Jordan Love's regression from year 3 to year 4, year 1 as a starter to year 2. And then that wide receiver room where I think that the best comparison I can give is it's kind of like Mississippi State baseball is at times where we have 6 outfielders who I wish that we could play all 6 of them at once, but you can only play 3 guys. I would love if you look at every wide receiver room in the NFL, the Green Bay Packers probably have the best 6 wide receivers in the NFL. But that does not do you a lot because you can only put 3, maybe 4 of them on the field at once. So I really just don't know. I don't really like that approach of being like, congratulations, you have no superstar, and the 6 6 average guys. It does not appeal to me. I don't think it's going to be successful.
Sure.
They are my pick for 6. If I had to pick a team to get 6 wins, it would be the Packers. I think I picked them winning more than that. But if I had to pick someone to get 6 wins, it would be the Packers. Matt LaFleur is a very good coach. Won 2 games last year with an injured Jordan Love, starting Malik Willis, right, at quarterback. And realistically, he kind of changed the game plan around Malik Willis, which I have a lot of respect for his ability to do that. The Green Bay Packers looked very different for the 2 weeks when Malik Willis was quarterback. And Malik Willis looked like a good quarterback. His stats were good. But I think that was just a very good game plan by Matt LaFleur, which gives me a lot of respect for him as a head coach, which maybe you should trust him as a result and think that the game plan and the way he's building that team is going to work. I don't have that much respect for him. But yeah, we shall see. That's kind of I do not trust the Green Bay offense in its current iteration.
Yeah, I'll hop in real quick because I actually have thoughts. In terms of them getting 6 wins, Matt LaFleur kind of seems like the guy that is, like, if he's the head coach, they're going to find a way to win games.
Mike Tomlin kind of guy.
Yeah, I wasn't going to give him quite that respect yet because Mike Tomlin's done it for a long time. Yeah. And also, I disagree about the wide receiver room because even if you go back to our draft night coverage, we disagree fundamentally about Matthew Golden. I'm a lot higher on him than y'all are.
But then I think JP, you're pretty high on him, right? I think
okay.
It's just me.
I'm
the
apologies, JP. I'm very high on Matthew Golden. And so with him leading the group, it kind of puts the receiver room in new light to me. I actually end up really liking it, whereas last year I would have completely agreed. I would have been like, it's a bunch of kind of gadget, gimmicky guys, a bunch of pretty solid receivers, but no alpha dog. And I really think Matthew Golden can be that. And so then that gets me excited to be like, oh, Dontavian Wicks is your wide receiver 2, and Jaden Reed can kind of fill in and make plays when needed, and same for Dubs. Also, don't disrespect Dontavian Wicks, UVA legend. So got to shout out my Wahoos. But yeah, I really like their wide receiver room. It's not like I'm saying it's elite or anything, because also you got to realize Matthew Golden is coming in as a rookie.
Right.
But I really like that pick from them, and I think it's going to help them out a lot offensively. So
yeah, tons of things to touch on from what y'all said, and then I can get into my stuff. But I think, for one, I am also high on Matthew Golden. Our best performing TikTok is a Matthew Golden TikTok.
True.
So we should all be high on Matthew Golden, I'd say.
I should make a TikTok dogging on him and then hope that he just outperforms that.
That would be interesting. Good luck with that, though. I had him potentially going as high as 9 to the Panthers in the draft. I was that high on him. Now, I do want to say, I don't think he's a wide receiver 1 yet, and I don't expect him to be that for the Packers in his rookie season. But what I do love is the speed is going to be a big thing there, his big play threat. And then he was really, really good at catching the tough ones. His spectacular catch rating in Madden would be really high. It won't be this season because he's a rookie, but it will be really high. I promise you. He's going to make some big catches for the Packers. I have a feeling for that. For the Packers, this has been the story for a couple years now. They haven't had a 800-yard-plus receiver since Devontae Adams left, besides last season with Jaden Reed, which Sanders is going to pull up those numbers. We have a graphic for that as well. But, yeah, they've been wide receiver by committee. They were last year, and they were the year prior as well since Devontae Adams left. But what I do think we're kind of missing here with the Packers is just go back and look at the numbers and go back and just look a little bit closer, and I think you'll see this is a really good team here. And this is the team that I have winning the NFC North. I have them going 12-5, and it's large in part because I thought they were really good last year. They just got unlucky. Packers were a top 5 offense and a top 6 defense in yards per game last year on both sides of the ball. They were 11-6 in their division. Any guesses what their record was?
In their division?
Their record in the division, I'm going to say 1-5. The Packers?
You play...
I'm going to say 1-5.
4-2?
1-5.
Okay.
They were 1-5. They
I couldn't tell which way you were going with
They
it.
lost 6 games last year. They were 1-5. Their only other loss, opening week against Saquon Barkley in Brazil to the Super Bowl champions. They were 11-1 in games where they did not, or 10-1 in games where they did not play their division last year. And in those games that they lost in the division, they lost them by a total of 19 points. That's 5 games, 19 points. 4 of them were by 3 points or less. One of them was by 1, 2 were by 2, and 1 was by 3. So with their only other loss being to the Super Bowl champs, I felt like this was actually a team that was like a step away from being really good. And the pushback might be, oh, well, they were winning one-score games on the other way. No, they weren't. They blew out the Saints. They blew out the 49ers. They were really, really good against the other teams as well, and including the AFC. A big thing for them is going to be the schedule. Again, we've gotten into this with the Detroit Lions and even the Chicago Bears. If you have that one, they have a very, very difficult the NFC North schedule.
Oh yeah, the strength schedule.
Yes, so all 4 of these teams are in the top 6,
Top 7.
top 7 in terms of difficult schedules. The NFC East is the other division that's up there as well with them. They play some really, really good teams, and part of that is because they play themselves. But the Packers are going to have another difficult schedule, but I think it's actually a schedule that's pretty easy to manage. Opening week, getting it at home and facing Detroit, I think is going to be helpful for them, and I think they're going to get that done. Jaden Daniels comes to town the next week on Thursday Night Football, and I think that's going to be an interesting game. It's going to be hopefully one of the better Thursday Night Football games we've ever seen with Jaden Daniels and Jordan Love.
Should be a ton of fun.
But going forward from that, their schedule is very workable through those first 11 weeks. They'll play Cleveland, at Dallas. They'll host Cincinnati. They'll go to Arizona. They'll go to Pittsburgh in an Aaron Rodgers potential revenge game. They'll host Carolina. They get to host Philly instead of going back to Philly, where they lost in the wild card round last season. They go to the New York Giants. I think that's a big thing there, just in the NFC East. Getting to go to Dallas and go to the New York Giants instead of going to Washington or Philly, I think that's pretty big. Getting the best teams in that division last season at home and the worst teams on the road helps them a ton from a schedule perspective. They'll also get to host Baltimore. The other teams have to go to Baltimore. I think that's going to be key. Week 17, I'm going to go and book that as one of my, this is going to be one of my favorite games of the season. And unfortunately, it's not going to be in prime time. It could be flexed, but Baltimore comes to Green Bay and Lambeau Field week 17. That's going to be awesome. I hope that's a snow game. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry against Josh Jacobs and the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. That's going to be a really fun game to watch. They'll get to play at Detroit on Thanksgiving, which is a game that they won 2 years ago on Thanksgiving. So I think it's a very, very workable schedule for how difficult it is for the Green Bay Packers, and that's why I have them playing so well. And I think that's going to be the key, though, is it's going to be their division. They were 1-5 last year, all of them basically one-score games. If they're just 3-3 in the division, they're in theory 13-3 last season, so 13-4, I should say. So I think that's going to be an interesting question for them. If they can handle the division, which I think they will, I think they're the best team in the division right now, and that's why I have them winning it.
Sure.
They're going to be a good team. Their only problem is I think schedule is going to hold them back from getting up to the first seed potentially.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we're all pretty high on Green Bay. We all have them hitting double-digit wins, so just kind of varying degrees. Sanders, you have them going 11-6. I have them technically lowest at 10-7. But I like the point, kind of how the schedule works out. Do we want to talk about kind of the Jair Alexander stuff? Is he's out the door?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jair's out the door. Goes to the Ravens. They also lost cornerback Eric Stokes,
Which is another, that week 17 matchup you get to see, or week 17, right?
Yeah, Jair Alexander.
You get the Jair return to Green Bay.
Returns to Lambeau. Yes, that's going to be really interesting. I thought Nate Hobbs from the Raiders, which not a lot of people know that name. I know that name because I've played a ton of Madden. And I don't just think he's good because of Madden, but I think that's part of it.
Sure.
I will say. He's an 80-plus overall in Madden. So he's really good, obviously. But, no, I think he replaces that a little bit there. Xavier McKinney was absolutely outstanding for them. But the big thing for the Packers was they were prolific at getting to the quarterback. Mm-hmm. And Edgerrin Cooper had a really good season out of A&M.
I was going to shout him out, yeah.
Rashawn Gary was really good as well. So the Jair Alexander loss and the Eric Stokes loss are big,
Yep.
but I don't think it plays as much
I
for
also
the Packers, who were a top 6 defense last year.
Right, they were a top 6 defense, and Alexander has been hurt for so much of the past 2 to 3 seasons that they realistically have been playing without him for a lot of the games. So he definitely will be missed. He's a talented guy, but they've done it without him before, so I see no reason why they can't do it without him
Completely
going
agree.
forward.
Your other big question for Green Bay, and we haven't mentioned this yet, is going to be offensive line. Their PFF grades were not good last year, which I know Sanders is big on PFF.
His ears just perked up under the headset.
They got 4 guys below a 68 rating on their offensive line. Bulldog legend Elton Jenkins, who actually, when he rang the big cowbell, he was the one that made it topple over at one of the football games last year. He's moving to center this year. He hasn't played center since 2020. He's also in a contract dispute with the Packers, so there's some turmoil there. But this is not the offensive line that Packer fans have been used to back in the Rodgers years with David Bakhtiari and Brian Bulaga.
Dylan
Zach-
Day, another Mississippi State legend.
Zach
The Packers.
Tom is really the only consistent piece for them. And you think back to the Eagles' playoff game last year, that's where it happened. Like, Jordan Love got eaten alive. And they, again, are going to have some questions there. So that's going to be key for them going forward next season is how does the offensive line play? And can they get the same success from Josh Jacobs? Because if they can run the ball, then I think it's not as big of an issue. But they were not able to run the ball against the Eagles in the playoff game. And they got behind early, and they were forced to pass, and a pass rush like the Eagles ate them alive. That is my biggest fear for the Packers and how I think they'll lose games this year. If they get behind early and they have to pass, this offensive line is not good enough to protect Jordan Love. And a guy who already sprained his MCL last year, like, we don't want to – he also hurt his elbow as well and nearly missed some time. You don't want to knock this guy up who's on a big-time contract, and he's the face of your franchise. So that's the worry for Green Bay for me.
Agreed.
After picking them to win the division is offensive line.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Anything else on the Packers before we round out the division?
I've got nothing else. Sanders?
No, like I said, they're my pick if I had to pick a team. Did you speak about Jordan Love? Do you have thoughts there? Neither. So
Sure, I can.
I've got him as QB3 ahead of JJ McCarthy, only because JJ McCarthy has not played. JJ McCarthy will basically be a rookie this season. I am a little lower on Jordan Love than I was going into last season coming out of his first year starting. I was high on him after his first year starting, had him in fantasy, but now I'm a little bit more skeptical.
So you would say you are not bullish on Jordan Love?
I am not
Okay.
bullish on Jordan Love.
Well, I am bullish on Jordan Love. I think he's the best quarterback in the division from a talent perspective. Like we talked about earlier, I have questions with Jared Goff, and I'm going to have even bigger questions now with Ben Johnson gone. I think Caleb, with the way he played last season in one-score games, which was not good, there's some question marks there, which is why I wouldn't put him up. I agree. J.J. McCarthy is the worst quarterback in the division solely because he has not played an NFL snap yet. So for me, it's Jordan Love. He's got the playoff win to really show for it. So he at least meets that criteria for me, which is big in terms of who's the best quarterback in the division. While Jared Goff has more, I think Jordan Love is a guy who has made this offense that much better. Like this cast of receivers, if you put it with, I don't, not to throw anyone under
Brock
the bus.
Purdy?
Not Brock Purdy, but Kyle Allen or Davis Mills. Like this is not actually really a group of receivers that you really even know their names because they're, like you said, none of them are superstars. None of them are really even stars yet. And yet with Jordan Love, you know all of these names because they've made big plays because Jordan Love has made the big throws to get it to these guys. Jaden Reed has become, a big player because of Jordan Love in my eyes. And so for me, Jordan Love is the best quarterback in the division, and I expect him to play well again this year because he's able to take these pieces and make them ascend into names that you know. You know these names. You know Romeo Dobbs. You know about Jaden Reed. You know about Dontavian Wicks. You know about Christian Watson. And I think you're going to know about Matthew Golden as well this year. So Sanders pulling up the PFF grade to see if there's a way to tear it apart. I think a big question for it last year, and you touched on it, the first thing you said was you felt like there was a regression. And I thought, for me, the regression was solely because sprained MCL the first week of the season, and then he was dealing with the elbow injury to end the season. And for me, that was the large part of it. I don't think Jordan Love was really ever healthy throughout the entirety of last year.
Yeah, it'll come down to me. Do we get first half of the season Jordan Love or second half of the season Jordan Love? He, in weeks 1 through 11, he had 14 touchdowns to 5, 6, 10, 11 interceptions. That is not a great ratio for a fourth-year QB and a second-year starter. And I'm not even looking at the PFF grades because we're not going to talk about that because y'all dog on me for that stuff. Those are the stats. 14 to 11 is not a great ratio. That's just me. I could be wrong in the counting. He threw a lot of interceptions and then cleaned that up for the second half of the season. 12 through 18, he threw 0. So it's really going to come down to, and maybe that is in part due to injury. He missed a couple. He missed weeks 2 and 3 due to injury. So it could come down. It might have been that he was dealing with. But if we get a second half of the season kind of Jordan Love next year, then they're my pick to win the NFC North. If we get the first half of the season, they're my pick to get 6 wins.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that it's that regression that has me skeptical because I was so bullish on him after year 3. So, yeah, we'll see. I would love for him to prove me wrong because I might have him in a keeper fantasy league. Yeah, I actually think I do. I really would love for him to prove me wrong.
That is
fair enough.
That is the key factor in all of these conversations, anyways. Fantasy football.
It really is.
I hate this guy.
We're gonna live stream our draft, right? It's gonna be an episode.
Absolutely.
He's gonna be
Let's go.
bad because he screwed me over. in
We'll
fantasy
have
last
our
year.
own fantasy segment where we break down.
Oh, we're gonna be doing updates, 5-minute
Exactly.
updates every week, like how we
Exactly.
our records. Because we're
Start.
I'm not
Roshan
doing- I'm
Johnson
not
this
starting
week.
to- I'm not doing this. Start.
that would actually be a fun segment.
You got that one.
Sit.
Jack.
You should
Sit
do that
Justin
segment.
Jefferson
That would
this
be a
week,
really
man.
fun
Trust me.
segment.
Yeah, the matchup just is not there.
Yeah,
Jordan
the
Addison
matchup.
though, they're gonna be triple teaming Justin Jefferson, so you got to start Jordan Addison.
I think that would be hilarious.
Okay, I'm down for that. Do we ready to move on to the last team, the Minnesota Vikings?
Yes,
Let's do it.
that.
All right.
All right, so Minnesota Vikings come into this season after them as well having a really, really good regular season, and then you have the nightmare that was the last week of the season and the nightmare that was the first game of the playoffs. Sam Darnold proved really all year that, okay, this is a guy who can actually play quarterback. This is not a guy that's seeing ghosts. This is not the quarterback that we remember from the Jets or the Panthers. He made big-time throws to his credit throughout the season. I mean, his throw against Seattle, in Seattle, was one of the best throws I've ever seen from a quarterback. And that's Sam Darnold we're talking about again here. So, big showing for him. Then he gets to the last week of the season and the postseason and their first and only game in the postseason, and he was not good. He was really not good. As Nick Wright would say, he went into pumpkin mode, and Sam Darnold walks out the door because J.J. McCarthy is coming back off a torn meniscus and is expected to start this season. In fact, Kevin O'Connell has already confirmed that he will start this season. J.J. was the 10th pick in last year's draft. He was the only quarterback from last year's first round to not start a game last season. Again, like I said, torn meniscus, suffered during practice during the 2024 season. That it's going to be an interesting question for them. He was good in the preseason. He showed some preseason flashes. Is that something we expect with him going forward? He's been a guy that's really always been a winner, no matter where he's been. And he's joining a franchise and Kevin O'Connell that has also been a winner recently. Kevin O'Connell has done a great job in terms of making these quarterbacks that aren't necessarily in the top 10 and turning them into winners, and not necessarily producing more stats with them, but turning them into winners, and you see that. Kirk Cousins, 2021, this is the year before Kevin O'Connell joins them. 8-8, has a great season from a production standpoint, but he's 8-8. The next season, first season with Kevin O'Connell as the head coach after the Rams won the Super Bowl. Kevin O'Connell was the Rams offensive coordinator for that Super Bowl team. Joins the Vikings. Kirk Cousins is a winner, 13-4. He was 4-4 the next year before he popped his Achilles. They had a tough start. They started 0-3 to start that season, nearly starting 0-4 with the loss to the Panthers in an 0-3 versus 0-3 game that I remember watching very closely on NFL Sunday Ticket. But my point is, he turns them into winners. Sam Darnold, in 2 years starting in Carolina, was 8-9. Comes to the Vikings, starts last season, was 14-3, and his numbers actually went up a lot. So this is, Kevin O'Connell has proven that he can take quarterbacks that aren't necessarily in the top 10 and turn them into winners. And in some cases, he can even turn them into guys who can put up really good numbers that aren't as good as you would expect them to be. And that'll be an interesting question for Seattle. But for the Vikings, is that something Kevin O'Connell is going to do with J.J. McCarthy? And then my other question for them this season is going to be, is J.J. McCarthy finally an elite quarterback for O'Connell? And that would be my question to y'all is, do you guys see J.J. being not necessarily, do you see him being elite? Do you see him just being a capable starter? Or is he just another game manager for the Vikings?
It's really hard to put together kind of how I feel about him, because the style that Michigan played when JJ was the starter there was just, they were had such a dominant run game that he wasn't really asked to do much, and at times when he was asked to do a lot, he didn't look great. But at the same time, you could tell that he was athletic enough that he could make plays. I mean, it's just a freak play, but the one that comes to mind is they try and run that double pass, and the running back throws the pass to him, and it's behind him, and he has to leap to catch it and turn, set his hips, and fire all in one motion as has a linebacker or someone bearing down on him, and he's getting smoked, and he delivers a dime.
In the Rose Bowl, by the way.
In the Rose
Not just
Bowl,
in
correct.
the Rose Bowl.
So it's clear to me that he has the talent. I think he has the athleticism and the traits to make plays and be more than a game manager, but we've just not seen it yet. And so I just really don't know what to expect from him.
Yeah, so J.J. McCarthy in his last season at Michigan threw for under 3,000 yards on 9 yards per attempt with 22 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. His biggest, you asked if he was a game manager. His biggest, the best thing he brings to the table is he threw 9 interceptions in 2 years as a starter. That's really good. He threw only 4 his senior season. The issue is he's just not going to be aggressive. Like I said, 9 yards per attempt, that's pretty low for a good quarterback. That's not in the top 10. As a quarterback in college that year, he was not top 10. You had guys like Jaden Daniels throwing for 11.5 with 40 touchdowns. You had guys like Caden Salter at Liberty going 9.9 for 32. That's a smaller school.
Liberty stats are fake. So.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel at Oklahoma, 9.5 with 30 touchdowns. Bo Nix at Oregon, 4,400 yards, 9.5 yards per attempt, 45 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. So even as efficient as he was, statistically, he just was not that good. And in part, that was that Michigan offense. It was a very run-heavy offense. But I think that it's a little... it would not be wise to say, well, this guy was efficient in a run-heavy offense, so if we double his workload, that efficiency is going to continue. That's not necessarily the case. Quarterbacks can benefit a lot participating in a run-heavy offense because the defense is every single snap stopping the run first and pass second. And so quarterbacks benefit from that. And so if you say, well, he was efficient in a run-heavy offense, if we put him in a pass-heavy offense, he's going to be just as efficient. That's not how that works because now the defense is stopping you. You're their number one priority. And so I would be a little bit nervous with J.J. McCarthy as the quarterback when all the defense, not all, but the defense's main priority is stopping him. Yeah. He was effective in his effective in his preseason game. Had 188 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, only 19 dropbacks. But I also think people are just like, I kind of forget how good Sam Darnold was last year. He was top 10 in yards per attempt, touchdowns, but he did in that last 2 games of the season, Week 18 and then the wild card. He imploded, posting PFF grades of 45 and 55. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he does in Seattle. I'll be interested to see, are there Viking fans who regret if he has another really good season in Seattle? Do Vikings fans regret letting him walk? And can J.J. McCarthy step in and kind of meet the expectations that have been set under Kevin O'Connell?
Mhm.
So, yeah, we'll see. I'm not the highest on him. I'd be a little bit nervous, but I could be wrong. He fits the stuff, a white quarterback from Michigan. We've seen those enter the NFL before and be good.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, the kind of vote of confidence I could give JJ, and it's because it seems Kevin O'Connell has kind of given him the vote of confidence, right? JP hyped him up as this guy that knows QBs and knows how to
Get the
hide
best
in,
out of him.
get the best out of QBs, and this is the guy that he took in the draft, at
Yes,
10, just making sure that it wasn't another guy there. But he took him at 10. I know Sam Darnold had the bad end to the season, but he had a great season holistically, and they decided to move on to him so they can get to this J.J. McCarthy kid that they really like. And so it's a thing of, like, if we're going to trust that O'Connell is this guy that knows QBs, then I'm going to trust that he knows what he's doing with J.J. McCarthy.
yeah.
I think
I don't think it'll be smooth sailing rookie year, but, I think I trust him.
to give hope to the Vikings fans and to push back on Sanders' argument, which I completely understand. I think there's plenty of reason to be nervous, and I think Vikings fans are nervous. But I think a part of this is Kevin O'Connell, one, gets the most out of these quarterbacks, but you still got Justin Jefferson, and you still have Jordan Addison.
Yeah.
And for the pushback on JJ not throwing it down the field a ton, he's going to throw it down the field with Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, 100%. And so I think we're going to see more of that. I think we're going to see the explosive play a ton out of Minnesota because that's what they're best at. Like Justin Jefferson is not necessarily a guy he's not 5 yards in a cloud of dust. He's 25 and then 35, and then he pops you off for 65. And I don't expect that to change because that hasn't changed with any quarterback that's ever played with Justin Jefferson. He's made any quarterback that he's played with look really good because he's out there on the field, and I expect him to do no different with JJ. But I completely understand the concern because JJ is not necessarily a guy who's had a ton of reps throwing the football. And then division-wise, like the schedule is not going to be easy. They're going to have some big questions there. I think the opening of the schedule, though, helps them a ton, and we all agree on this. They're opening 5 weeks before the bye, week 6. They go to Chicago to open the season. That's going to be a tough one. Ben Johnson's first game at Soldier Field. But then they host Atlanta. They host Cincinnati. They go to Aaron Rodgers, and they go to Cleveland. Now, a big thing about those ones, they host Atlanta on Sunday Night Football, and they're not going to Pittsburgh and going to Cleveland. They're actually playing that game in Dublin, Ireland, and then the following week they're playing it in London, England. So those are not road games. Those are actually games where it's essentially a neutral site game. So I think that helps the Vikings a ton because Pittsburgh is a place that has a really, really good crowd, and Cleveland can even have a good crowd as well. And that's going to be an interesting matchup in London. Shedeur Sanders potentially versus J.J. McCarthy. I think that's going to be a really fun game to watch. So we all have them going 4-1 to open the season, and then after that is where it gets really interesting, kind of rough.
Yeah.
Hosting Philly, going to the Chargers, going to Detroit. They host Baltimore. They've got the Sam Darnold revenge game. I think that's going to be a really fun one. Going to Seattle. Yeah. They're going to play on Christmas, hosting Detroit. That'll be interesting. They go to Dallas for a Sunday Night Football game. So they have 4 primetime games, 6 nationally televised games with Dublin and London games. So you're going to see a lot of J.J. McCarthy. So his rookie season is about to be on full blast. And I think I wonder if that's going to put a bunch of pressure on him while he has been a guy who has stepped up. I mean, he was the quarterback at Michigan and won a national championship. So I don't expect him to waver in that. But they are going to be in front of your eyes a ton next season. A big thing I think is going to help this team, though, is the defense. They were the second best rushing defense in the league last season, and we haven't really even touched on this yet. Their additions, they were 4th in sacks as well. They returned their entire defensive line, and then they add Javon Hargrave from the 49ers, a really good defensive tackle, and they add from the Commanders Jonathan Allen. And I think that's going to help their pass rush and their rushing defense up front very, very well. It could help them a ton in the Detroit games with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I think the defense with Brian Flores is going to be really, really good again. And I think that's going to help the Vikings a ton because they got after the quarterback last year. It helped Sam Darnold a ton. They weren't really necessarily the best offense with Sam Darnold, and I don't expect them to be the best offense with J.J. McCarthy as the rookie quarterback. So defense is going to help them a ton, and I think it's going to be a key for them next season because they're going to play some really, really good quarterbacks in Lamar Jackson and Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. They get to play as well. They get to play Joe Burrow on this list. Shedeur Sanders, they'll play elite quarterback, I would think. So it's going to be interesting. We all kind of agree. I have them going 8-9. Sanders has them going 9-8, and Jack has them going 8-9 as well. Now our Vikings fan, which is actually who is our Vikings fan?
It's a Sports Illustrated writer, Joe Nelson. I was going to talk about that. You
Sure,
were
go ahead.
talking about how nervous Vikings fans are.
He's not nervous.
This writer would disagree. Sports Illustrated writer Joe Nelson has the Vikings going 14-3, starting the season 6-0. And then winning 8 of their last 9, losing only to Washington on that back half of the season. So it's there's some confidence, I guess, amongst Vikings fans. They do believe in J.J. McCarthy. I did not get a chance to read his article because we were prepping this afternoon before the show started at 5. But there's clearly some excitement there, but not on this podcast for sure.
Yeah, we have them finishing 8-9 as a collective group. And with that, I guess I'll go ahead and get into our collective standings. This is going to be interesting with collective standings because we're going to take, for each game, we'll take whatever pick was more frequent. Since there's 3 of us, we're always going to have one. Unless, well, you can't put a tie in there. I hope you don't put a tie. That would be, if you call it a tie, though, that would be pretty sick.
That'd probably mess up your spreadsheet.
It would mess up my spreadsheet. It wouldn't record the data. I don't know what it would do. It would probably just blow up the spreadsheet. But I think we're going to see this on a lot of divisions. I think we're going to have some, just close.
Sure.
Every team looks like they're just above 500 or just below. So for our division, with the NFC North, we have now predicted, as a group, we have predicted that the Lions win the division at 10-7 because they'll have a better NFC record than the Packers. Packers are also at 10-7. The Bears at 9-8, and the Vikings at 8-9. For our individual predictions, I have the Green Bay Packers going 12-5 and winning the division. Then I have Chicago at 11-5. The Vikings are 11-6. I apologize, and the Vikings at 8-9 as well. And then the Detroit Lions I have having a bad season at 6-11. Sanders, where are your teams at?
I've got the Lions winning the division at 12-5, followed by the Packers at 11-6, and then I don't know the tiebreaker, but I've got the Bears and Vikings both at 9-8, so 3rd and 4th place, which probably won't be relevant. I doubt a 9-8 team will make the wild card spot. That's very unlikely. So
we shall see, though. We'll find out as we get deeper into predictions where each of these fills out, because you look at the rest of the teams in the NFC. And outside of maybe the Eagles and Commanders, I don't know if there's a team I can confidently say that we're going to predict to win more than 10 games or 11 games as a group, and then even in our individual more than 12 games. 12 games could be the first.
I could see the NFC West getting there. Maybe you got 49ers and Rams or 49ers and Seahawks. Because that is a team that I do think that there are 3 teams that could legitimately win that division. The question is, are they winning that division with 13 wins? Or are they winning that division with 10 wins? Because that's what's really going to matter.
Schedule is what plays the biggest one in this. The NFC North being the second toughest schedule as far as a division goes is a large reason that I think we're not going to see. I don't think we're going to see a team get to the teens while Sanders or Jack has the Lions getting to 13. I think we're a lot less likely to see that compared to what we saw last year, because if you recall, these teams played the AFC South last year with the Jaguars, Colts, Texans, Titans. They were not good. And they also played the NFC South, if I recall. So they played a much easier schedule than they played last year. So it's going to be or a much easier schedule last year than they will play this year. So I think that's going to play a lot into the win record that they set last year.
Yeah.
Sure.
This season.
The real question Viking fans need to be asking is, could we see was it a Chet Holmgren year 2 Rookie of the Year? Like, is that a thing in the NFL? Because I feel like I've never heard of that happening. I don't know what the precedent there is historically.
I don't know, but that I'm curious there. My guess would be no, but we don't have a lot of precedent there.
Yeah. To
Of
see
players missing their entire rookie season and then being good enough to win the Rookie of the Year the next season.
Yeah.
So
that's something to keep your eye out for.
Sure.
I mean, you don't have a lot of rookies that just missed that entire opening season.
Yeah.
That's
And
kind of unprecedented in itself. Any sport.
Realistically, if that was an expectation, I think there's a good possibility JJ McCarthy is the favorite to win it. Over a guy, I mean, I would if JJ McCarthy had been drafted this year. Let's simplify it by saying that I would have him as my favorite to win Rookie of the Year over a guy like Cam Ward or
I
Jackson.
mean, he's got the best situation.
He's got the
may
best
have-
situation.
He may have gone number 1 as well this year. I think there would have been an argument.
There would definitely be an argument. I would still have taken Ward. But I mean, JJ McCarthy won so big by being able to come out when he did and get into the NFL when he did. And even though he got screwed by an injury, now he's in a way better situation than most of the guys that got drafted last year with him, and now all the guys that got drafted this year, like Jackson Dart and Cam Ward. So, and Tyler Shuck, he's in a better situation than that.
I do want to say my biggest thing for the Vikings next season, and it's a huge loss for them, a huge offseason loss. They lost Cam Bynum, who, if you don't recall, was one of the key, if not the key piece to their awesome defensive celebrations last year. If you remember them, they had a lot of choreographed celebrations that they had throughout the year. Cam Bynum was one of the leaders of that, and he goes to the Colts. So
Huge for the Colts.
some lost mojo potentially there for the
Yeah.
Vikings. And
If
that
y'all need me
defense.
Vikings, I am available. I don't have anything on Sundays, so I could even meet with y'all on the week and we could like practice.
I thought you were
and
like
stuff.
saying you were available to be their fan.
No, available to be their choreographer
Are you a
/
Vikings fan?
safety.
I think that's what he was saying.
That is not what I'm saying.
He's a big JJ McCarthy guy.
I literally just talked for 5
Yeah,
minutes
I
about how
know,
I'm
I know.
not a JJ McCarthy. Y'all be putting crazy stuff in my mouth. That's insane.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. I think that's it.
Yeah, that is it.
It's the end of the
Sunday
show.
will be AFC North. That's kind of how we're going to tackle it. Is going to do back and forth between conferences, tackling their respective divisions. So AFC North will be back or up next with the Browns, Ravens, Steelers, and whoever else is the last team.
Bengals.
Bengals. Thank you. That's another interesting one. It's
a
not as
yuck
interesting as
division.
it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, it was the NFC North. As far as like closeness goes, it's going to be a little bit more cut and dry, I imagine, this year, but still going to be interesting. Did y'all see that Aaron Rodgers announced this is his last year?
Yeah.
On the Pat McAfee show.
I cried.
Which was sad. Yeah, I mean he's the last of that era,
Mm-hmm.
unless part of me kind of like puts Matthew Stafford in that era, and I know he's not.
I
But-
see why you do, but
But like when I, became aware of football in the 2011, 2012 era, Matthew Stafford was a third, fourth year guy. Like he was decently established and he was good at the Vikings and he had Megatron. So
sure.
I kind of have Matthew Stafford in that same generation of quarterbacks. I think he's the last guy in that generation. Because I would say that 2004 was the beginning of that generation. I kind of consider the Eli Manning to be that 2004 class to be different from like the Tom Brady. Like I think that there's a cutoff between the late 90s and the early 2000s.
Sure.
I think
So-
it's fair. Yeah, that is really sad news. I kind of was a quasi Packers fan for a while because of how much I loved
Oh,
Aaron
yeah.
Rodgers. He was
100%.
just so cool. I was very on board the Stephen A. Smith train of he's a bad man,
Yeah,
and he was.
for a time, I thought he was the best quarterback in the NFL, talent-wise.
I think
The season
I
they-
think he was. I don't think you have to say you think. I think he was
The season
best
where he was
quarterback
like,
in the NFL.
I think we can run the table, and then they just like go do like that's just so badass, man. That's fire.
Yeah.
It is a large part. He is the reason I have this shirt, and that
Sure.
is an Angle Ball Classic shirt for me.
Do you think you play better than that shirt?
I don't know.
We'll have to pull up the
We have
stats.
to run the numbers
Yeah.
on that. But
That's an interesting question.
I liked Aaron Rodgers so much that my grandmother got me this shirt, and so
That's pretty cool.
that is why I have this shirt. And yes, it's an Angle Ball classic. It's up there with all of our classic shirts. Your Haniger Seattle Mariners shirt.
Yep, out just kind of out of the blue.
Don't you have a blue shirt that you?
Yeah, blue Under Armour that I wear every week. I literally wear it like every week.
Whitehead's green shirt.
Or his purple one.
Or his purple one.
The purple one's a classic.
Yeah.
The purple one. Oh, and the green ones too. He's a pretty colorful guy. He's got some fire shirts.
Iconic.
Win shirtless as always.
Yes, absolutely.
Bare skinned. Anyway, that's all we have for the show.
Yeah.
So thanks for tuning in. We'll be back for y'all, like Sander said, Sunday with another division.
Mm-hmm.
And when we figure it out, kind of how we're going to space in college football conferences, we'll let y'all know.
Yeah.
But for now, it'll just be NFL. But we'll see y'all then. So peace.
See ya.